In this video, we're going to look at how the actions in the filtering category work. Mainly, we will analyze how the conditional action works. The conditional action, as the name suggests, allows us to define different conditions based on the fields present in the data stream. For fields that are text type, we can choose conditions such as contains, does not contain, equals, not equal, or whether it is null or not null. When necessary, a second parameter can be set for a comparison. For numerical values, like in the second condition here, we have number-specific comparisons. Less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, equal, not equal, or null, not null. Likewise, a second value can be specified for comparison. As you can see, each condition can be given a name to clarify what is being checked, making it easier to relate outputs to the next step in the data flow. We can also define complex conditions, not just a single comparison. If you look closely, you'll see some parts have a darker shading and others are grouped in separate shaded boxes. This corresponds to the precedence of operations. If you go to the Code tab, you'll see the parenthesis used to group all comparisons inside the shaded area, and when it leaves that group, it's outside the parenthesis. Important things to keep in mind with this action. The comparisons are processed sequentially. That is, when an event arrives, the first thing checked is condition 1. If condition 1 is true, the event exits through that path and no other conditions are checked. This behavior is different from what happens with labels, where events are checked against all labels and sent to everyone that matches. Here, only the first matching condition determines the output path, so it's important to define the order of conditions carefully, because otherwise events may go through an undesired path. In general, you should have a clear scheme when defining multiple conditions. When two different conditions are defined, they are disjoint, meaning they don't affect one another. Another key point is that the maximum number of conditions allowed in a conditional action is 8. This is a design limitation because each condition has its own output port. And if there are more than 8, the interface becomes too crowded and difficult to manage. If you need to evaluate more than 8 conditions, for example coming from different sources or devices, what we typically do is chain conditional actions. Use the first conditional with 8 conditions, send the default output to another conditional and continue adding the remaining conditions. By chaining conditionals, we can solve the problem. As an example, here we have an output port for condition 1, one for condition 2, and one default output. Events that meet condition 1 exit only through that port, those that meet condition 2 exit through its port, and all others not matching any conditions exit through the default port. One important consideration: when we enable a conditional like the one shown here, we are splitting the data flow. Events go either here, here, or if applicable back through here. This is logical, but keep in mind that events only go down one path, not multiple simultaneously. However, in cases like this one, where two branches come out of a single port, for example, one goes to a transformation, the other to a parser, then we are duplicating events. It is important to understand because duplicating increases both the number of events and the volume of data processed. Another consideration: when two different outputs are connected to the same input of an action, we create a waiting point, a synchronization point. The message builder won't process anything until it receives event information from both branches, top and bottom enrichments. So it's a merge point. Finally, the other filtering action is sampling. It's a very simple action where you just configure the number of allowed events, like 1 out of how many. For example, 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000, etc. The value depends on your event traffic. The more events, the larger your sample can be. This is useful, for instance, to test sending to a destination without overloading it with too many events.